The Forgotten Wife. A gown, a gala, and grace redeemed attention. If you think appearances don't matter, this video will shock you. The world of wealth often hides dramas darker than any soap opera. In this passionate story, Serafina Sarah Hayes, a woman who faded from a confident professional into a neglected housewife, becomes the unexpected heroine when her millionaire husband, Ethan Vance, strays into the arms of a clever mistress. Under the glittering chandeliers and golden walls of their opulent mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, secrets burn and hearts break. But when a sudden transformation catapults Sarah from a life of self-neglect to a vision of grace and elegance, the entire dynamic changes. Can a stunning gown save a marriage, or is it too late for redemption? Let the drama begin. Sarah Hayes looked at herself in the mirror, holding back tears. The woman staring back looked exhausted, her hair pulled into a messy bun, prominent dark circles, and an oversized t-shirt stained with last night's pasta sauce. She was a far cry from the Sarah who used to dazzle at Boston charity galas, drawing admiring glances and receiving compliments for her exquisite taste. She wondered how she had gotten here. How had she allowed herself to sink so low? Her husband, Ethan, was a self-made millionaire entrepreneur in the technology sector. Long before the money arrived, they were college sweethearts at Stanford Business School. They shared the dream of creating something big, an empire, a life of freedom, or simply a stable, loving home. Sarah remembered the day Ethan landed his first major investment. He came running back to their tiny apartment in Palo Alto, swept her off her feet, and spun her around in pure euphoria. But that carefree couple seemed to have lived centuries ago. Success had changed them both. For Ethan, it fueled his ambitions. He attended high-stakes social gatherings with top executives, often returning home very late, smelling of cologne mixed with the faint aroma of expensive scotch. For Sarah, success initially meant excitement, someone to indulge her every whim, a closet full of designer dresses and luxurious vacations on the Amalfi Coast. But somewhere along the way, she lost herself. There was no single catastrophic event that triggered Sarah's despondency. It was more a slow erosion. Ethan's increasingly critical remarks about her cooking, her clothes, or her inability to rise to the level of his associates' wives. Then there were the social gatherings, where she was eclipsed by incredibly polished women who wore designer clothes like a second skin. Over time, Sarah's confidence slowly crumbled. She started avoiding the mirror, skipping her makeup routine, and ignoring the occasional gray strand peeking out of her dark hair. Her mother, Vivian Shaw, had warned her that marriages built on ambition could be fragile. Vivian used to say, "When you marry a man with big dreams, you either keep pace or you get left behind." Sarah had always ignored the warning. She believed love was enough. Tonight, looking in the mirror, Sarah realized love alone might never be enough for a man like Ethan. She straightened her posture, ran a hand through her messy hair, and considered if she still had the will to change. That moment of introspection was interrupted by the sound of laughter echoing from downstairs. Ethan was home, and he was not alone. She crept quietly toward the staircase, trying not to draw attention. She could hear Ethan talking animatedly, his voice dripping with the charm he once reserved for her. Another voice, bright, seductive, and dangerously confident, answered. Sarah's heart sank. She recognized that tone. The woman was Devon Price, a high-profile interior designer who had been working on their mansion's renovation. Rumors had been circulating among the household staff that Devon was more than just a designer. Sarah pressed her back against the hallway wall, her eyes closed, her hands trembling. She couldn't bear to see them laughing together, locked in an intimate exchange. Though she had no tangible proof, she suspected an affair. The fleeting thought of bursting into the living room and confronting them crossed her mind, but she knew she lacked the energy and, more importantly, the confidence to fight back. The laughter subsided, replaced by discreet whispers. Feeling dizzy, Sarah rushed into the bedroom and closed the door. She slid to the floor, her back against the wood, tears welling in her eyes. She felt the pain of betrayal, but also a surge of anger toward herself. What if she had stood her ground, refused to cower in the shadows, and reclaimed the spark that once defined her? In that moment, she resolved that something had to change. She didn't know how or when, but she couldn't continue living like this. Glancing at her reflection one last time, Sarah whispered, "I will not be invisible forever." The morning sun filtered through Sarah's sheer bedroom curtains, but she had barely slept. The scene from last night replayed in her mind like a bad film on a loop. She heard that voice, Devon's flirtatious laugh, and felt the sick wave of dread again. Determined not to remain the passive spectator in her own life, Sarah got out of bed and headed downstairs. The living room was immaculate. The only signs of last night's presence were 2 empty wine glasses on the coffee table. She wondered if Devon had stayed the night. The thought made her chest tighten with jealousy, hurt, and humiliation. Ethan was already at the dining table, sipping black coffee and reading the financial news. He barely glanced up as she entered. "Morning," he said, in a tone so casual it sounded dismissive. Sarah swallowed hard. "Morning," she managed, keeping her voice level. "I heard you last night with Devon, working on the renovation plans." Ethan lifted his gaze. His eyes paused on her stained t-shirt and messy hair for a moment before refocusing on the newspaper. "Yes, we were finalizing a few ideas for the new lounge. We ended up having a few glasses of wine. Lost track of time." She paused, waiting for him to elaborate, perhaps reassure her. But he didn't. Instead, he turned a page, the paper sounding louder than ever in the still room. "I see," Sarah said, unsure what else to say. She wanted to believe his explanation, to cling to the shred of normalcy, but the residual tingling of her intuition wouldn't let her. After a moment, Ethan cleared his throat. "I'm heading out of town for a few days, flying to Miami for a business conference." Sarah's chest tightened further. Business conferences were part of his routine, but now every trip filled her with dread. She wondered if Devon would be joining him. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning, early flight." He nodded. An awkward silence settled between them. The tension was palpable, yet neither wanted to acknowledge it. Finally, Ethan rose, folding his newspaper neatly. "I'll grab breakfast at the office," he said, dismissing Sarah without a second glance. He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. Alone in the vast, elegantly decorated room, Sarah felt a wave of loneliness. This mansion in Greenwich, once the home of their dreams, felt like a cage. With a sigh, she began clearing the wine glasses. Her hand trembled, threatening to drop them. A cough behind her nearly made her jump. It was Marta, the housekeeper. Marta hesitated before speaking, her eyes filled with sympathy. "Ma'am, if you'll permit me, I overheard Mr. Vance on the phone this morning. He sounded very close to Miss Devon." Sarah stood immobile. Marta had been with them for years, a loyal, discreet employee. She wouldn't say anything unless she was genuinely concerned. "Close? How?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. Marta lowered her voice. "He mentioned something about booking 2 seats to Miami, but specifically instructed his assistant to keep Miss Devon's itinerary separate from his so that you wouldn't see it." The words hit Sarah's chest. She placed the glasses on the nearest surface, her breath catching. "Thank you for telling me," she managed to say. Marta's eyes glistened with empathy. "I am sorry, ma'am. I just thought you should know. You deserve better. Once Marta left, Sarah sank onto the sofa, her eyes filling with tears. The confirmation was like a punch to the gut. Her marriage was unraveling, and she felt helpless. She thought about calling her mother, Vivian, but couldn't bear the "I told you so." She considered calling her best friend, Elaine, who lived in Boston. Perhaps Elaine would have some advice, or at least an empathetic ear. She grabbed her phone, searching for Elaine's contact. Her thumb hovered over the call button. "What do I even say?" she whispered to herself. Still, she pressed it. Elaine answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful. "Sarah, it's been ages!" Hearing Elaine's warmth, Sarah's composure crumbled. She burst into sobs. Between gasps and sniffles, she spilled the horrible truth that had been gnawing at her heart. Ethan was cheating. Elaine listened patiently, never interrupting once until Sarah finished her story. Finally, Elaine spoke. "Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry, but you can't let him drag you down. You have to fight back or walk away. You need to remember who you are." "Who am I? I got lost. A question for you?" The audience. Do you think Sarah should fight for her marriage or simply walk away with dignity? Comment your opinion below. A long silence followed. Elaine's voice was quiet but urgent. "Then we'll find you again. I'll help you. You're not alone in this." Sarah wiped her tears. She felt a glimmer of determination. "Maybe you're right. I can't just sit here waiting for him to decide my fate. I need to do something." In that moment, the seeds of doubt converged with a flash of hope. She might be neglected now, but that didn't have to be her destiny. If Ethan thought she was too broken to fight for herself, maybe it was time to prove him and the rest of the world wrong. Elaine wasted no time. She arranged for Sarah to meet with her at a chic Boston cafe called the Papillon, a place frequented by socialites and rising entrepreneurs. When Sarah walked in, she tugged at the sleeves of a cardigan several sizes too large, feeling painfully self-conscious in the sea of impeccably dressed patrons. Elaine spotted her and waved vigorously. With golden curls and a polished navy pantsuit, Elaine radiated the confidence Sarah once had. The two women hugged, and Sarah immediately felt a rush of comfort and longing. They sat, ordering cappuccinos and a selection of macarons. Elaine leaned forward, her tone urgent, yet compassionate. "All right, honey, let's cut to the chase. Did you confront Ethan about Devon yet?" Sarah shook her head. "I tried to ask indirectly. He lied to me. He's taking her to Miami, Elaine. He's been doing so many shady things behind my back." Elaine pursed her lips. "That is unacceptable. Why are you tolerating this? You don't have to put up with it." Sarah sighed, a huge weight pressing on her chest. "He used to be the man of my dreams, Elaine. And I still think. Maybe it's just a phase. Maybe if I go back to being the woman he fell in love with, I can get him back." Elaine took Sarah's hand. "Don't forget this is about you, not just him. But if you want to try, there's nothing wrong with reminding him what he lost. Sarah, you used to be unstoppable. Remember how we owned those college events? You were the star." A faint smile touched Sarah's lips. She remembered. She once had the confidence to speak in front of hundreds, to dance without inhibition, to dazzle crowds in her little black dress and heels. It felt like a lifetime ago. After they said goodbye, Elaine set up a meeting for Sarah with an image consultant, a woman named Isabel Towers, who had helped relaunch several notable women in Boston high society. Elaine believed that sometimes an external transformation could ignite the internal changes needed to reclaim one's life. Before the appointment, Sarah took a walk down Newbury Street. She passed flagship stores, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and others she used to frequent without a second thought. Now she felt like a ghost, drifting past storefronts she had once confidently entered. Yet every step stirred a memory of who she had been. Isabel's office was located in a sleek skyscraper overlooking the Boston Public Garden. Upon entering, Sarah was greeted with a serene, minimalist aesthetic. Soft instrumental music played in the background. Isabel, a statuesque woman with silver hair and impeccable posture, motioned for Sarah to sit in a plush white armchair. "So, tell me about yourself, and what you hope to achieve," Isabel began, her voice cool and polished. Sarah swallowed, feeling self-conscious under Isabel's evaluating gaze. She explained her situation, her faded confidence, her distant husband, the possibility of another woman. Isabel listened intently, tapping a perfectly manicured nail against the surface of her desk. When Sarah finished, Isabel steepled her hands. "Transformation is more than just clothing, Sarah. It's about confronting the narratives that hold you back. We can start with the superficial: hair, makeup, wardrobe. But if the mind doesn't change, you will simply revert to old habits." Her words struck a chord with Sarah. "I am ready to change," Sarah said softly. "I just don't know how." Isabel rose, walking around her desk to stand beside Sarah. "We will do it together," she replied, placing a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "But you must be willing to let go of the version of yourself that believes you are not worth the effort." That night, as Sarah prepared for bed, she glimpsed her reflection. She still looked tired, but there was a new spark in her eyes. Maybe it was just a small flame, but it was there, a promise of hope. Meanwhile, in the exclusive circles of high society, whispers were beginning to spread. Rumor had it that Devon was making plans beyond interior design. Some said she was hinting at an engagement, flashing what appeared to be a diamond bracelet that Ethan might have gifted her. The gossip columns, always scenting juicy stories, smelled blood in the water. Sarah had no idea she was already the subject of hushed conversations. All she knew was that tomorrow she would meet Isabel for a personal shopping session that could change her life. Her heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and dread. If her transformation was unsuccessful, she risked losing Ethan forever, and, more importantly, losing any remaining self-respect. Like and subscribe if you think Sarah can beat the mistress. Don't miss the grand reveal. Sarah arrived at the Madison James boutique the next morning, nerves dancing in her stomach. The boutique was located in Back Bay, filled with sleek evening gowns, tailored blazers, and glittering accessories that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. Isabel was already there, flipping through racks of clothing with the intense concentration of an artist selecting paint colors. "Sarah, darling, I've already pulled out a few pieces I think might work," Isabel said, greeting her with an air kiss on each cheek. A small group of sales assistants fluttered nearby, ready to assist in any way. Sarah was led into a fitting room. Isabel handed her a fitted black dress with a delicate lace overlay. "Try this first. It will be a starting point." With trembling hands, Sarah took the dress and ducked behind a velvet curtain. She slipped out of her baggy cardigan and jeans, and for a moment, she hesitated. Looking in the mirror, her body felt unfamiliar after years of neglect. But slowly she pulled on the dress, zipping it up until it closed. When she emerged, her heart was pounding. The reflection staring back was different. Her curves were accentuated. Her posture seemed more upright. Despite the messy ponytail and lack of makeup, she could see a glimmer of the old Sarah. Isabel circled her, her eyes narrowed in evaluation. "We'll need to adjust the length a bit and perhaps cinch the waist, but this is promising." Next came a sleek navy pantsuit, and then a gorgeous emerald green evening gown that swept the floor. Each outfit pulled out a different facet of Sarah's personality: poised, playful, elegant. Sales assistants rushed in, bringing belts, scarves, and stiletto heels. Sarah found herself smiling, feeling euphoric. During a break, they sipped sparkling water in plush armchairs. Isabel studied Sarah thoughtfully. Elaine told me that Ethan is hosting a charity gala next month at the Fairmont Copley Plaza. Sarah's eyes widened. She was unaware of any upcoming gala. He didn't tell me. Isabel's lips pressed into a thin line. It's a huge event. High-profile guests. A silent auction. It's on everyone's social calendar. Sarah realized, with a pang, that she had been excluded from her own husband's social sphere. She took a deep breath. "Then we need to make sure I make an unforgettable entrance," she said, determination settling in her voice. Isabel's face lit up. "That's the spirit, Sarah. We will find you the perfect gown, and then we'll work on hair, makeup, a protocol refresher and everything." In the following weeks, Sarah immersed herself in her transformation. She hired a personal trainer, recommended by Isabel, to help her not only shed a few pounds, but, more importantly, to regain strength and vitality. She took sessions with a stylist who taught her how to manage her once glorious hair, now dull from neglect. She was shown subtle makeup techniques that highlighted her eyes and gave her features a softer, radiant glow. At first it felt uncomfortable, getting up early to run, measuring portions instead of indulging in comfort food, practicing walking gracefully in heels again. Yet every small victory fueled her self-esteem. She noticed that when she carried herself more upright, people treated her differently. Even small interactions at the grocery store felt more positive. Elaine checked in regularly, offering words of encouragement. Sometimes they would laugh, sharing old college photos, marveling at how carefree they used to be. Other times, they discussed the impending threat of Devon. Rumor had it that Devon was strutting around, flaunting exclusive invitations, and acting as if she were already Mrs. Vance. Sarah worked in silence. She prepared herself for the moment she would confront Ethan, not with tears or accusations, but with a resolute sense of self-worth. She wasn't simply trying to win back a husband. She was fighting to reclaim the life she deserved, with or without him. As the charity gala approached, Ethan remained distant. He was often out of town, presumably with Devon, and rarely called. A few times, Sarah glimpsed them in society pictures. Devon's perfectly coiffed blonde hair, a sharp contrast to the memory of Sarah's own neglected appearance. It hurt, but it also motivated her. Finally, the night of the final gown fitting arrived. Sarah entered the boutique, where Isabel greeted her with a knowing smile. Inside the fitting room hung a satin, strapless gown in midnight blue. Elegant, understated, yet undeniably striking. Isabel had collaborated with a local couture designer to customize it for Sarah's figure. Cautiously, Sarah slipped on the gown, letting the cool fabric glide over her skin. As Isabel zipped her up, Sarah's heart raced. This was the moment of truth, the transformation. When she stood before the mirror, time seemed to slow. Her shoulders were bare, accented by a subtle sheen of body lotion. A delicate diamond necklace Elaine had lent her sparkled at her collarbone. The gown cinched her waist and flared softly around her legs, giving her the appearance of a modern-day princess. Her hair was styled in soft waves that cascaded elegantly over one shoulder. Her makeup was luminous, highlighting her eyes and lips without overpowering her natural beauty. "Sarah, you are stunning," Isabel whispered, and for the first time in years, Sarah felt it. Stunning, confident, and ready. All that remained was the grand reveal. But would Ethan even recognize this woman? And if he did, Would it be enough to shake him from Devon's grasp? Only time would tell. The ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza glittered under the warm light of crystal chandeliers, each reflecting off champagne flutes and polished marble floors. High-profile guests mingled, dressed in designer gowns and bespoke suits, as a string quartet played softly in the corner. This was the type of event Sarah had once navigated with ease, when she was a confident socialite, actively supporting her husband's philanthropic efforts. But tonight felt different. As she stepped out of the limo, a silence seemed to settle over the crowd gathered at the red carpet entrance. Cameras flashed, and curious glances turned toward her, recognizing the face they once dismissed as the neglected wife. Only now, Sarah was anything but neglected. She wore the midnight blue gown that fit like a second skin, and her hair shone beneath the soft lights. Helena's diamond necklace drew attention, but it was Sarah's new composure that truly captivated them. Shoulders back, chin held high, she moved with a regal grace, even though she felt waves of nervous tension beneath her polished exterior. Inside the ballroom, waiters offered champagne on silver trays. Sarah gratefully accepted a glass, taking a small sip to calm her nerves. She spotted Elaine across the room, who raised her glass in a silent toast, smiling encouragingly. Isabel, standing nearby, gave Sarah a subtle nod of approval. For the first few minutes, Sarah worked the perimeter, exchanging polite greetings with acquaintances who struggled to hide their shock at her transformation. There were the wives of Ethan's partners, each dripping in jewelry, who before barely acknowledged her presence. Now they approached wide-eyed, complimenting her style, fishing for details about her new beauty regimen. Sarah replied with gracious smiles, carefully avoiding the topic of Ethan or Devon. In reality, she had no idea if Ethan had arrived yet. Her gaze scanned the vast ballroom, searching for the man who was still technically her husband, and then she saw him. Ethan was standing near the bar, impeccably dressed in a classic black tuxedo. His tall, broad-shouldered figure exuded authority as he spoke to a group of high-society businessmen. At his side, in a glittering gold dress, was Devon. Her manicured hand rested possessively on Ethan's arm, and she laughed as if no one else in the world existed. A flash of anger coursed through Sarah, but she held her ground. She reminded herself that her purpose here was not to start a public fight. It was to show she was neither invisible nor weak. Taking a breath, she made her way toward the bar. Someone must have drawn Ethan's attention to her approach, because he turned and froze. In that moment, the color drained from his face. Devon frowned, looking between Ethan and Sarah with confusion, perhaps even apprehension. "Sarah?" Ethan's voice came out in a whisper. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, which, in a way, he was. Sarah offered a composed, polite smile. "Hello, Ethan. I think congratulations are in order for another successful gala." Devon's eyes narrowed. "Sarah," she said, her tone sharp. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Clearly," Sarah retorted, maintaining her composure. She could feel the tension mounting around them as other guests pretended not to eavesdrop. Ethan cleared his throat. "You look incredible." He seemed unable to find words. Sarah took a small sip of her champagne, letting him flounder. In the past, she would have rescued him from the discomfort, but not tonight. "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice cool. "I came to support the charity, unless you would prefer I wasn't here." Ethan hesitated. Devon's grip on his arm tightened, but Ethan gently peeled her off. "No, of course. I'm glad you're here," he said, forcing a smile. "We should talk." Sarah looked at Devon, who shot her a venomous glare. "Enjoy the gala," she said sweetly, and then turned to walk away. Ethan followed Sarah, leaving Devon standing by the bar, stunned into silence. They found a quiet corner near a large, ornate mirror. Sarah set down her champagne, crossing her arms to keep her composure firm. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" Ethan asked, trying to regain control of the situation. Sarah shrugged. "Why would I? We barely speak, and if you recall, you never mentioned this event to me." He looked uncomfortable, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "Look, I'm sorry about that. Things have been complicated. I didn't want to stress you." A sarcastic laugh escaped Sarah's lips. "Stress me? By excluding me from an event hosted by my own husband?" She shook her head, her carefully styled hair gleaming under the chandelier light. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his groomed hair. "Sarah, I know I haven't been fair to you, but seeing you tonight, it's like I forgot how stunning you can be." Sarah raised a hand, stopping him. She could feel old emotions surfacing, longing, hurt, love, anger, all swirling in her chest. "Ethan, this isn't just about my appearance. It's about respect, communication, and honesty. We can't fix what's broken if we aren't even addressing it." He opened his mouth to reply, but a stage announcer called Ethan to join the other event sponsors for a brief presentation. Divided, he looked at Sarah, wanting to continue the conversation. But the stage was calling. "Please don't leave yet. After the talk. Talk for real?" he asked, his eyes pleading. Sarah looked past him, noticing Devon watching them. She exhaled, feeling the weight of her transformation pressing her. Was she ready for this confrontation? "All right, we'll talk afterward," she replied. As Ethan hurried to the stage, Sarah's gaze followed him. She realized that the success of this night wasn't about convincing him to come back. It was about proving to herself that she could reclaim her dignity. Whether Ethan acknowledged it or not, Sarah had already won a significant battle. She was no longer the neglected wife in the shadows. She was a woman who had resurfaced from self-neglect, ready to face whatever came next. Sarah found a seat at a round table near the side of the stage, grateful to see Elaine and Isabel beckoning her over. The applause thundered as Ethan and other sponsors went up to make their remarks. Devon, relegated to the audience, stood near the bar, nursing a cocktail, a bitter expression on her face. "You did brilliantly," Elaine whispered, placing a hand over Sarah's. Ethan was practically drooling. Isabel nodded in agreement. Devon's reaction was priceless. Sarah tried to smile, but her mind was in a whirl. She watched Ethan, who was addressing the crowd about the importance of the charity's mission, helping underprivileged children access education. He looked every bit the handsome, successful philanthropist. It was easy to forget the private turmoil, boiling just beneath the surface. When the speeches were over, the string quartet resumed the music. Waiters fluttered, refilling champagne flutes. As Ethan came down the steps, a crowd of people swarmed him, eager to shake his hand. Sarah lingered on the edges, uncertainty knotting her stomach. She noticed Devon make her move, sauntering across the ballroom toward Ethan. Devon leaned in to whisper something in his ear, pressing her hand intimately against his chest. The sight made Sarah's blood boil, but she clung to her new composure, standing tall and reminding herself that she was no longer invisible. Finally, Ethan broke free from the crowd. He guided Devon aside, speaking to her briefly, a stern expression on his face. Devon's face flushed with anger, and she stormed off in the direction of the ladies' room. Sighing, Ethan scanned the room until his eyes landed on Sarah, and he motioned for her to join him in a quieter alcove near the lobby. The alcove was draped with thick burgundy curtains and lined with plush benches. It was a popular spot for private conversations or clandestine encounters. The irony was not lost on Sarah. She took a breath and approached, noticing that Ethan's usually confident demeanor seemed strained. "Thank you for waiting," he said quietly. His eyes flickered over her gown again, admiration evident in his gaze. "We need to talk about us." "Agreed," Sarah said, her voice as calm as she could muster. "You start talking." Ethan shifted, seemingly searching for the right words. "I know things haven't been right between us for a while," he began. "And I take responsibility for my part in that. I got swept up in the business, the success. I neglected you." "And Devon," Sarah interjected, not letting him off the hook. He exhaled sharply. "Yes, Devon," he began. "It started as harmless flirting. She was helping with the mansion renovations, and we spent time together. I never intended for it to go this far, and yet it did," Sarah said, forcing herself not to look away from his regret. "Tell me, is it still going on?" Ethan hesitated. His silence was eloquent. Sarah felt a painful tightening in her chest, but refused to let the tears fall. She had come too far for that. "I ended it. Or at least, I tried to end it tonight," Ethan said finally, his voice tense. "I told her, we're done, that my priority is fixing things with you." She didn't take it well. Sarah studied his face. Part of her had longed to hear these words, but she couldn't let him off so easily. "And you think just telling her it's over fixes what you did?" "No," he said quickly. "I know it doesn't, but I'm trying. When I see you here, transformed, radiant, it reminds me of who you were and why I fell in love with you in the first place. You miss me because I look like this again, because I took the time to dress up and fix my hair." Her voice trembled despite her best efforts. "What about the times I was in sweatpants, exhausted from trying to keep up with your expectations? Didn't I deserve your love then?" Ethan's eyes filled with regret. "Of course you did, but I got lost. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying I let the allure of success cloud what truly mattered." They were silent for a moment, the distant hum of laughter and music from the ballroom, a stark contrast to the tension between them. Finally, Sarah sighed. "Ethan, I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not sure if I want to stay in this marriage." The admission surprised her as much as it did him. She had spent weeks preparing to win her husband back, yet now that he was here, repentant, she felt empty. Perhaps she had realized something vital in her journey of self-transformation. She didn't need Ethan to validate her existence. He reached for her hand, and she allowed him to hold it, if only for a moment. "I understand if you need time," he said softly. "I'll do whatever it takes to win your trust back. Please don't give up on us yet." Before Sarah could answer, a sharp voice cut the air. "How touching!" Devon stepped out from behind the thick curtains. Her eyes were red-rimmed with tears, but her expression was venomous. "So you're dumping me for this pathetic, sloppy loser who decided to dress up for one night?" Sarah stiffened, but refused to let Devon's words puncture her new confidence. "Sloppy or not, I'm still his wife," she replied calmly. "And you are not welcome in this conversation." Ethan turned to Devon, anger blazing in his eyes. "Devon, not now." She let out a bitter laugh. "You told me so many things, Ethan, that you were tired of your wife's complacency, that I was exciting, refreshing." She wiped a tear from her cheek, smudging her mascara. "But I guess the game is over now, isn't it?" Sarah felt a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, pity for the other woman's heartbreak, anger at Devon's intrusion, and a twisted sense of triumph. But she held her composure, taking a step back to give them space. Ethan sighed. "Devon, I'm sorry." Devon looked at Sarah with a mixture of envy and disdain. "You'll regret this," she hissed at Ethan, and then stormed off, leaving the thick curtain swaying in her wake. In the ensuing silence, Sarah and Ethan exchanged a weary look. The confrontation had been inevitable, but it left them both shaken. "This is far from over," Sarah murmured, exhaustion creeping into her voice. He nodded. "I know, but maybe it's the start of something new, if you let me." Sarah said nothing, turning to rejoin Elaine and Isabel. Her life was on the cusp of another change, but where it led, she couldn't yet be sure. The gala ended with a crescendo of applause for the charity's success, but the personal dramas unfolding behind the scenes felt far from resolved. Sarah slipped out before the final toast, finding solace in the cool night air. Elaine insisted on driving her home, and Sarah was grateful for the support. Her mind buzzed with Ethan's words, Devon's accusations, and the whirlwind of photographer flashes still dancing on the edges of her vision. The next morning, the gossip press had a field day. Headlines splashed across websites and gossip columns. Millionaire magnate and wife spectacularly reunite. Wife's makeover steals the show at charity gala. Mistress designer left abandoned in shock twist. Sarah scrolled through the articles, her heart pounding. Some painted her as a triumphant underdog. Others hinted at an inevitable scandalous divorce. The photos, however, were unanimous. Sarah looked stunning, composed, radiant. She allowed herself a small smile at the progress she had made. Meanwhile, Elaine called to update her on new rumors. Devon had been spotted checking into a downtown hotel, looking distraught. There were whispers of her involvement in questionable design deals, using Ethan's name to secure large upfront payments. Apparently, her professional reputation might be taking a hit too, Elaine explained. Not that she doesn't deserve it, but it's still a mess. Sarah couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. She knew what it was like to feel eclipsed, pushed aside. But Devon had played a dangerous game, one that involved intruding on a marriage she had no business interfering with. Sarah's phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. M." A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. Her first instinct was to block the number, but she hesitated. She wasn't sure if it was a real threat or just Devon's parting shot. Deciding not to engage, she tucked the phone back into her purse, trying to focus on the day ahead. Ethan had requested a meeting, just the two of them at their Greenwich mansion. Sarah arrived mid-afternoon, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach as she walked through the ornate foyer. Memories flooded back. The lonely nights, the sound of Devon's laughter echoing through those walls. But she reminded herself that she was no longer that neglected, abandoned housewife. She found Ethan in the study, a cozy room lined with mahogany bookshelves and plush leather armchairs. He looked up from his laptop, offering a tentative smile. "Thanks for coming." Sarah sat across from him, crossing her legs and folding her hands in her lap. "You said you wanted to talk about us." He nodded, closing his laptop. "Yes. I want you to know I meant what I said at the gala. I ended things with Devon. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to win your trust back." She studied his face. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually immaculate hair was slightly disheveled. He looked vulnerable. "You hurt me deeply, Ethan. It's not going to be fixed with a few apologies and good intentions." "I realize that," he said, his voice strained with emotion. "I've arranged for a couples therapist to meet with us, if you are willing. We could try to work through everything." Couples therapy. The suggestion hung in the air. Sarah wasn't opposed to the idea, but she wasn't sure she was ready to open old wounds. Yet something in Ethan's eyes made her consider it. She could see regret, a desperation to hold on. "All right," she said softly. "I'll go. But you must understand that I'm doing this for me as much as for you. If I sense any deceit, I'm leaving." Her voice sounded firm, a tone she had rarely used with him before. Ethan nodded, relief flooding his features. He reached for her hand, and this time she allowed it. "Thank you," he whispered. They talked for an hour, skirting around painful details. His affair, her feelings of abandonment. Both agreed they would discuss these issues more deeply in therapy. But for now, they just needed to establish a fragile truce. "I'm going to stay with Elaine for a while," Sarah added. "I'm not ready to move back here yet." His shoulders slumped, but he didn't argue. "I understand. If you need anything at all, let me know." As Sarah prepared to leave, she paused at the threshold. "Ethan," she said, looking over her shoulder, "do you still love me, or is this just guilt talking?" He looked at her, his eyes filled with something that might have been love, regret, or a mixture of both. "I never stopped loving you," he said softly, "but I forgot how to show it." She nodded, unable to suppress a small ache in her chest. "We'll see," she whispered, and left the study, her footsteps echoing down the empty hallway. Outside, the afternoon sun gilded the mansion's driveway. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She had always imagined saving her marriage would feel triumphant, but the reality was far more complicated. It felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, not quite sure if she would fall or fly. A week passed, and Sarah settled into Elaine's apartment in Boston. It was a cozy yet elegant two-bedroom space with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city skyline. Every day, Sarah tried to re-establish a sense of normalcy, running in the mornings at the public garden, devoting time to her self-care, and reflecting on the therapy sessions she and Ethan had begun. They were difficult, unearthing resentment and painful memories, but Sarah felt it was a necessary process if she was ever to gain clarity on saving her marriage. One afternoon, as she and Elaine chatted over mugs of herbal tea, Elaine's phone vibrated with a text. Elaine's eyes went wide. "It's from a friend of mine who works at a tabloid," she said. "He's telling me there's a rumor circulating about you, something big, about to break in the gossip columns." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What does it say?" Elaine's brow furrowed as she read. "It says Devin gave a journalist an explosive exclusive that could damage both you and Ethan." A sense of dread washed over Sarah. She remembered Devin's threatening text. "What could she possibly say?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with anxiety. The answer arrived the next morning. Overnight. An article had gone viral, featuring photos of Devin and Ethan in what appeared to be compromising situations from weeks earlier. Photos that left little doubt they had been intimate. The headline screamed, "Millionaire Vance's secret love nest. Wife set to be left penniless." The article alleged that Ethan planned to divorce Sarah, leaving her with nothing, all based on insider information Devin provided. It portrayed Sarah as a gold digger clinging to Ethan's fortune. Worse, it implied Sarah's transformation was a desperate ploy to win him back before he discarded her. Sarah felt physically sick reading it. "This is insane," she muttered, her voice shaking. "Ethan never said anything about divorcing me without a settlement. And even if he did, I have my own resources, my inheritance from my father." "This is all twisted lies." Elaine placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "She's trying to ruin both of you, especially you, because you won him back in a sense. Don't let it get to you." But it did get to Sarah. Despite her father's inheritance, the media narrative was painting her as a pathetic figure. Worse, old acquaintances began contacting her, either to confirm the rumors or to revel in the scandal. Elaine had to field calls all day, politely dismissing tabloids and shady reporters looking for a quote from Sarah. Ethan called, frantic. "I've spoken to my lawyers. We're filing a defamation suit. Don't worry, I'll take care of this," he promised. but the damage was done. Once the gossip was out, it was nearly impossible to contain. Their next therapy session was tense. Sarah sat across from Ethan in the therapist's cozy office, which overlooked a quiet garden. Dr. Campus, a calming presence in a gray cardigan, guided the session. "How do you feel about what's happening in the media, Sarah?" he asked softly. Sarah fiddled with the hem of her blouse. "I feel humiliated, betrayed. I tried to hold my head high, but this is personal." Ethan's jaw was tight. "I never authorized Devon to speak for me. She's acting out of spite because I ended things. I am so sorry, Sarah." The session delved into deeper issues. Ethan's admission of how he let external validation eclipse their marriage, Sarah's feelings of abandonment, and the guilt she carried for letting herself go. Both acknowledged that their disconnect made them vulnerable to someone like Devon, who thrived on their weaknesses. While therapy offered a path to healing, Devon's vendetta shook Sarah's newfound confidence. She found herself second-guessing her every move. Was this outfit too flashy or not enough? Would people think she was just trying to elicit sympathy from the tabloids? One afternoon, Elaine coaxed Sarah out for coffee at a nearby cafe. As soon as they entered, whispers followed her. A couple of patrons stared blatantly. One even pointed at his phone with the scandalous headline. Sarah lifted her chin, determined not to let them see her sweat. But her heart hammered in her chest. Returning to Elaine's apartment, she collapsed on the sofa, her eyes welling up. "I can't do this. The scrutiny is too much. Maybe I should just leave. Go somewhere quiet. Away from Boston." Elaine wrapped an arm around her, worry etched on her face. "Running away won't solve anything. You've worked too hard to reclaim yourself. Don't let Devon force you into hiding." Sarah took a shaky breath, remembering how she used to feel powerless under Ethan's shadow. Now Devon was trying to cast a new, even darker shadow. "You're right," she said, her voice steadier. "I'm not going to let her win. I'll release a statement or something. Clear the air." But even as she resolved to fight back, Sarah knew Devon's vendetta could still escalate. The question was, how far would Devon go to secure her own twisted sense of victory? And amidst all this chaos, could Sarah and Ethan truly find a way to heal? Do you think Devon's revenge is fair, or is it pure spite? Put it in the comments. And if you're enjoying this story of transformation, remember to share the video with your friends. Sarah decided to face the scandal head-on. With guidance from Elaine and a trusted PR specialist named Bruno Donoso, she drafted a clear, concise statement, refuting the tabloid accusations. It highlighted the fact that she had independent resources, that divorce was not an inevitable outcome, and that the photos of Devon and Ethan were taken during a time when Sarah and Ethan were struggling, but that he was working to repair the marriage. The statement went public online, and while it didn't silence all the critics, it offered a counter-narrative. Some media outlets were surprisingly sympathetic, noting how Sarah had handled the scandal with dignity. Devon, however, continued to fan the flames, giving sly interviews to anyone who would listen. During one particularly incendiary interview, Devon insinuated that Sarah might have had an affair of her own. A baseless accusation, but one that was enough to generate salacious headlines. She referenced an old college friend of Sarah's, suggesting they had been seen canoodling. Sarah almost spat out her morning coffee in shock when she read that. "That is ridiculous," Elaine fumed, pacing the living room. "That friend of yours, what was his name? Javier Ramos. Did you ever date him?" Sarah shook her head vehemently. "We studied together. He was just a friend. And I haven't seen him in years. Devon is scraping the bottom of the barrel." The whole saga took its toll on Sarah's emotional well-being. Even therapy felt heavier, bogged down by the added stress of public scrutiny. Ethan showed genuine remorse, often calling to check on her, apologizing for the mess Devon had created. But it was clear that he, too, was grappling with the fallout on his end. Business partners questioning his judgment. Socialites gossiping about his personal life. Then came the breaking point. One afternoon, Sarah received a call from her mother, Vivian Shaw. Unlike Elaine's supportive stance, Vivian's tone was harsh. "I've been hearing all this filth about you in the papers," she said severely. "It's embarrassing. The Shaw name is being dragged through the mud." Sarah's frustration boiled over. "Do you think I'm enjoying this? I'm fighting to clear my name, fighting to repair my marriage. I'm sorry it's not neat and tidy." Her mother sighed. "I raised you to be strong," Vivian retorted. "And part of being strong is accepting responsibility. You let your appearance and your relationship fall apart. This is the consequence." Sarah ended the call abruptly, anger and sorrow churning. She felt more alone than ever, except for Elaine's unwavering presence. For a moment she sank onto the sofa, contemplating the possibility that her mother might be partially right. She had ignored the cracks in her marriage for too long, but that didn't mean she deserved the avalanche of blame crashing down on her now. That night, as she sat by Elaine's large apartment window, gazing at the myriad of city lights, Sarah felt claustrophobic. She needed air, space to breathe. She pulled on a coat and went for a walk in the public garden. The cool night breeze and the rustle of the leaves were a stark contrast to the suffocating tension in her life right now. She found a quiet bench near the make-way for duckling statues. Only a few lampposts glowed, casting long shadows. She closed her eyes, inhaling the fresh air, trying to find some clarity. Her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen. Ethan. Usually she would ignore the call if she was feeling too emotional, but something made her answer. "Sarah?" he said, sounding breathless. "I'm glad you answered. Listen, something came up. Devon showed up at my office. She was unhinged, threatening to release even more damaging material unless I pay her off." Sarah felt a spike of adrenaline. Pay her off. This is blackmail now. She has gone too far. Ethan sighed. "I know. I told her to leave, but she won't give up. I'm worried about what she might do next." The silence hung, broken only by the distant sound of a taxi horn. "I'm tired, Ethan," Sarah finally said, her voice trembling. "I'm tired of the lies, the manipulation. All of this has exhausted me. Maybe we should just let this marriage go. Let Devon have her victory. I can't keep fighting like this." "Please, Sarah, don't say that," Ethan pleaded. "We can't let her win. If we surrender now, she gets everything she wants. She ruins both of us, maybe even my business. And you don't deserve to be painted as a tragic figure left in the dust. You deserve better." His words struck a chord with Sarah. She realized that despite everything, a part of her wanted to fight back, not just sneak away in defeat. "All right," she said after a pause, "but we need a strategy. I'm not going to play the victim anymore." "Agreed," Ethan said. "We'll figure this out together. Sarah, for what it's worth, I still love you. I just hope it's not too late." He hung up, her mind spinning. Devon was spiraling out of control, and Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Run from the chaos or face it head on. Taking one last deep breath of the night air, she decided she wasn't running. She would see it through to the end. No matter how complicated it got, Devon's threats escalated. Over the next few days, she planted rumors on shady online forums, alleging she had dirt on Ethan's financial dealings and Sarah's personal secrets. She even hinted that she would release doctored videos that would further damage their reputations. Sarah and Ethan were on high alert, constantly updating their legal team on every new development. Finally, Everything came to a head when Devon agreed to meet with them at the law offices of Ferguson and Shaw, one of Boston's most reputable firms. The attorney, Mr. Blasco, arranged the meeting to see if they could negotiate a cease and desist or a settlement to stop Devon from continuing her smear campaign. Sarah's stomach churned as she walked into the sleek, glass-walled conference room. Ethan was already there, seated at a long table. He stood up when he saw her, placing a reassuring hand on her elbow. They exchanged a tense, supportive look. Moments later, Devon walked in, dressed in a tight red dress, sunglasses perched atop her expertly styled hair. She radiated a fragile confidence, but her eyes betrayed a certain desperation. Mr. Blasco introduced himself and motioned for everyone to take a seat. Devon leaned forward, her gaze fixed on Ethan. "I'm tired of being ignored. I gave you everything, my creativity, my time, my heart, and now you pretend I never mattered." Ethan's voice was quiet but firm. "You were my designer. We had an affair. I won't deny it, but it's over. You need to accept that." She scoffed. "You think you can just dump me like trash? I have the proof, remember? The nights at luxury hotels, the gifts you gave me. Enough emails to spark a media firestorm." Blasco cleared his throat. "Miss Price, if you proceed with these threats or publish defamatory content, you expose yourself to a significant lawsuit. My client is prepared to take this to court. There is also the matter of potential blackmail." Devon's eyes darted to Sarah. "And you, the neglected wife turned fairy tale princess. Don't think I forgot about you. You humiliated me in front of everyone at that gala. Then you orchestrated this smear campaign, painting me as the villain." Sarah's jaw tightened. "No one needed to paint you as a villain, Devon. Your actions speak for themselves. You thought you could break us, but all you did was show me I'm stronger than I ever realized." Devon laughed, a harsh sound. "Strong? You cried in corners while your husband showered me with attention. Don't pretend to be a paragon of independence now." Sarah's pulse quickened. She fought the urge to lash out. Instead, she took a calming, deep breath. "Yes, I was weak. I let myself go, but I rediscovered who I am, with or without Ethan. That's what you don't understand. My worth is not dependent on his approval, or anyone's." Devon's face contorted with bitterness. She looked at Ethan, then at Mr. Blasco. "So, what is this hush money you're offering me? Let's get down to business." Ethan's face hardened. "We are not paying you. We are offering you a chance to sign a cease and desist. You will receive nothing except the promise that we won't pursue legal action for defamation and blackmail, provided you comply." Her lips parted in shock. "You're joking." Mr. Blasco slid a document across the table. "Sign this, and you walk away without facing criminal charges or a costly lawsuit. Refuse, and my clients will move forward with all available legal resources." A tense silence filled the room. Devon's gaze bounced between the document and Ethan. For a moment, Sarah thought she might rip up the papers and walk out defiantly. But her shoulders slumped. She grabbed a pen, scrawled her signature, and shoved the paper back toward Mr. Blasco. "Fine, we're done," she said flatly, before rising from her chair and hurrying out of the room, her heels clicking ominously against the marble floor. Sarah exhaled, feeling a tremendous weight lift from her chest. Ethan placed a hand on her back, murmuring, "It's over." She wasn't entirely sure it was. Devon had proven she was capable of low blows, but legally, at least, she had been shut down. That night, Sarah found herself at Ethan's city penthouse, one he kept in Boston for business. They had decided to talk things out away from the Greenwich mansion, which held too many painful memories. Over Chinese takeout, They spoke in halting, honest bursts about the betrayal, the therapy sessions, their hopes and fears. "Sarah," Ethan said softly, setting down his chopsticks, "I'm asking you to come home, not to the mansion. If that bothers you, we could stay here, or we could move. I just want us to be together, to truly rebuild." She searched his eyes, seeing a sincerity she hadn't witnessed in years. Her heart fluttered with the love that still persisted beneath the pain. "I want to believe you," she whispered, "but I need assurances that things will be different." "They will," he promised, reaching across the table. "I'll continue therapy. I'll communicate better. I'll respect you. I'll appreciate you, like I should have all along." A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek. She thought of the transformation she had undergone. Physical, emotional. She had found her strength. She had realized her worth. She was ready to give Ethan a second chance. Taking a breath, she smiled through her tears. "Let's take it slow," she said, her voice trembling. "I won't move back right away, but we will give us a real chance. We'll keep going to therapy. We'll keep talking. We'll keep working on who we are now, as equals." Ethan let out a shaky sigh of relief and pulled her into a tender hug. Sarah closed her eyes, letting herself lean into him. She wasn't sure of the future, but she felt hope flickering in her chest, a hope that was all her own, forged by her own resilience. They had come a long way from the depths of betrayal and self-neglect to a place of cautious optimism. And while the story of the neglected wife and her millionaire husband might continue to intrigue the tabloids, the real story, the one that mattered, was quietly unfolding in the hearts of two people learning to love and respect each other anew. V. The Architect's Legacy. Conclusion. Thank you for joining us on this tumultuous journey of heartbreak, betrayal, and, ultimately, one woman's self-reclamation. Sarah's transformation, from a neglected, insecure spouse to a poised, dignified figure, reminds us that true beauty begins with self-love. Watching Ethan grapple with his own guilt and finally choose to fight for the marriage underscores that redemption is possible when there is honesty, vulnerability, and a genuine desire to change. Devon's manipulative attempts to tear them apart provided the ultimate test of their unity. If this story moved you and kept you on the edge of your seat, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue bringing you stories full of drama, unexpected twists, and valuable life lessons. Leave us a comment with the most important lesson you learned today. Stay tuned for more captivating tales that remind us all to stay strong, embrace transformation, and believe that true love and authentic self are always worth fighting for.